Alright, what's going on, everybody? It's Brad here for the MCubed Network. I'm here with you to do the intro, not really the intro, the continuation of the Criterion collection, but we're going to be introducing you to the C's here in my alphabetical collection and breakdown of everything that I've accumulated, recommending the films to you, breaking them down, giving just my general thoughts. Of course, this is part of the art house and independent cinema section of the MCubed Network, where again I talk about films that are sort of outside the mainstream, foreign films, things that are, again, outside of mainstream Hollywood, because that's where I feel like a lot of the nuggets of gold lie. So, like I said before, we're going to get to the C's in my collection of the Criterion collection, going alphabetically. I have about 52 entries to go through, and so again, we're about 10 or 12 in. So, the first one I'd like to start with here. This film is deeply traumatizing and really shook me to the core the first time I saw it, and it still affects me when I think about it today. And, you know, I would say it's one of the greatest films of all time, and certainly one of the greatest films that I've ever seen. It's Russian. That is Elem Klimov's Come and See from 1985. The reason I got into this movie, or the main way that I sought it out, was in college. I was really, again, trying to deepen my understanding and technique of cinematography, and this is, you know, one of my personal favorites when I was first starting out, and he still is, but tried to branch out into, you know, foreign cinematographers from the past, stuff like that. But probably the best working cinematographer, Roger Deakins, he cites Come and See and the cinematography work here as some of his favorite of all time, and I believe it's in his top 10 and perhaps number 1. But Come and See is set in World War II, but it's told from a Russian point of view, as Elem Klimov is Russian. And it's about a young boy. He's a teenager. I want to say he's 13 or 14. His name is Fliora, and he basically, this is set in Belarus, which is on the Eastern Front in World War II in Eastern Europe, that basically exists between Germany and the borders of Western Europe, going into the Soviet Union, into Russia. And so basically, during World War II, these people were caught in, again, the Eastern Front, which was the Germans coming from the West, moving east, and the Soviets trying to protect themselves from the invasion, coming from the east to the west and meeting in the middle. And this is a story about the countless civilians and townspeople that were caught in the middle of this horrendous, brutal violence from both sides. Some of the most brutal fighting in the war was taking place here, and a lot of war crimes committed against the civilian population here with complete dispassion, no regard for humanity. And this movie, I think more than any war film, really puts you into the civilian perspective and makes you understand from an outside point of view. This is what's brilliant about the film. So it takes you out and makes you feel like you're watching something that you shouldn't be seeing. You're from this completely, not omniscient, because you're almost stuck only like in the present, and you're just forced to watch this young boy travel through this kind of nightmare landscape. And at the same time, it feels, while still in this weird perspective like you're watching something, it also is deeply, deeply immersive in this very flowing, like, I think highly advanced and like pioneering type of cinematography that uses the steady cam. So you're in these deeply personal shots that are also moving, where it feels like you're there. It's your point of view sucked into the movie, and it feels like you're running along with it, and you're someone in the scene. And for me, that was very, very disturbing. And I mean, I've seen this movie at least 5 or 6 times, and it's beautiful, and it's one of, again, I think it's one of the best films of all time. But every time I watch it, I still find myself not sick to my stomach, but I just feel so uneasy, and I feel so horrified. And you're forced to watch horrific things, but what I like and respect about it is that it doesn't shy away, and it shows you on the most brutal level, like, what is the truth about warfare, and the war that we often almost idealize as this amazing conflict of good against evil and all this type of stuff. But you understand the reality of war in this movie, and I think that makes it easily the greatest war movie of all time. No argument, in my opinion, outside of probably, Paths of Glory or Full Metal Jacket or maybe Apocalypse Now. But this is just on such a level more than those, viscerally and poetically as a piece of art in terms of cinema. Not that those aren't all incredible films, but I don't know, something about Come and See just shook me to my core, and without giving any of it away, just sort of describing it to you. Obviously, I think this movie is probably a 10 out of 10. again. And I think every person should see this movie before anyone has any opinions on warfare, especially in the modern world. Like, this movie makes you understand, I think, what war is, as close to seeing it, as close to being in it. I don't know. I think this is an important movie, like I said, that most people should see. And again, to understand just what is the reality of what humans can do. So I know that sounded very grim, but that's just my honest thoughts and my honest reactions. But this movie is incredible, and I don't want to say it's a joy to watch, because it's not like happy, but it's deeply moving. It's worth watching. It is just I don't know, it's a statement about something that's unfortunately intrinsic to human nature. So I think everyone should see this movie. Come and see L.M. Klimov. Okay, I know that was long, but I just love that movie a lot. So the next film, and the only other film that I have in the C section of the Criterion collection, is The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. And I am a huge fan of David Fincher. This movie is from 2008, by the way, directed by David Fincher. Huge fan. I think my favorite of his films is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, because I absolutely love those books as well. So, in any case, Benjamin Button, I was very happy to, I didn't know it was on the Criterion collection. So again, when I was in Movie Trading Company, which is a, used movie store, shout out to that store in Fort Worth. But in any case, when I was there, one, didn't know this was in the collection, and two, this was for like $5. It was used. What was weird about it is it's like the Criterion like slipcase and everything, but it's like perfectly formatted for the weird like regular Blu-ray, and it's just very odd. I don't know, I've never seen that before. But again, $5, it's the Criterion collection, I'll take it. And I hadn't seen this film before, but again, I love Fincher, so I had to see it, and it's pretty freaking phenomenal. It's extremely long at 162 minutes, which I want to say is like 3 hours, not quite. So almost 3 hours, if not 3 hours long. But I think this is this has a deeply, like Fincher, it's deeply poetic and deeply melancholic, where you're following just this a super interesting and unique point of view, with someone aging backwards. It's hard to almost comprehend, and it's hard to think about, but you get this interesting perspective of, and this is not a novel idea, but I'm just sort of thinking out loud, where, you have it's an interesting twist on human relationships, and therefore what you can do with drama in terms of like the character arcs of people that are essentially moving backwards, but simultaneously. So how does that develop again in between, human interaction and human relations, following a man whose point of view is rapidly changing and is reversing as all the people he loves are moving past him and becoming older, and his maturity as well is super weird to watch it ebb and flow. I mean, frankly, I watched this movie probably a year or two ago, and I don't remember it too well in terms of the plot, but I just remember Fincher having this deep, this is one of his most tender films, I would say, and this is one of his more, I don't know how to describe what I mean when I say earnest, but it's him being, I think, his most human, his most open, his most almost empathetic, and I think his most caring, honestly. I felt so much heart and warmth coming from this film, even again, if it had this sort of overall tone of melancholy. I think it's one of the more unique entrances in his filmography, and I mean, frankly, as I'm talking right now, it makes me want to watch it again, because I haven't seen it in so long. But I think that overall, it's an interesting choice for the Criterion collection, but I think because it is so unlike his sort of normal vibe and his sort of normal public perception, I think that's probably why it was in the collection in the first place. But I also, I highly recommend The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. But in any case, that's ultimately all the thoughts that I have. Like I said, I've only seen that movie once, so I need to go to further review. But if you're a fan of Fincher, I really recommend it. I also think that honestly that could be a good one to show people, to give an introduction to Fincher, because it's not as dark and grim and visceral as his movies usually are. So I think that improves they're dipping their toes into David Fincher's vibe. I think more than something like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo right off the bat. That would not be a good idea. But in any case, that's all I have for the C section of my collection. Next week when we get to the D's, there are a lot more interesting ones to explore that I'm going to give you all of my thoughts on. But once again, I appreciate everyone, and I want to thank everyone for tuning tuning in and watching my stuff, and also supporting the MCubed network. All of our different shows coming out weekly, every day. All of the guys, we're putting in a lot of work daily to just keep it on track. So shout out to Harris and Sam, those guys keeping it going. We've been really enjoying doing these shows and just kind of having a creative outlet where we can just talk about it and hopefully find an audience of people who are interested as well. So it's been great. So in any case, look forward to next week where we get into the D's and explore a lot more titles in the Criterion collection. This is Brad signing off here. See you next week.